And basically what happens is sometimes company, they release their software, they release their intellectual property publicly, so that everyone can access, most of the time developer can access and contribute their code, modify it, use it. And this is a basic, definition of open source that,
Okay, okay. Somebody else would like to say anything?
So we have a code which is open to edit. So any developer which is willing to contribute to the open source can take it and edit it, and he can create a pull request. If the person who is handling that handle, I mean the GitHub handle, thinks that it will be useful for future versions, he can merge it to the main thing.
Okay, so you're talking like people can work on the existing technologies, so they can use it also, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Sarah. Anyone else want to say?
Basically, it's a software which the company or anyone wants that the whole world applies their ideas, and like they can make some interactive changes, because everyone's way of thinking, everyone's way of writing the code is different. So like the main motto of being like making a software or like starting this open source is that only like everyone wants to like the company wants to everyone's to like give their ideas, write the code, and like how the different ways we can solve a particular question. That is basically open sources.
I would like to add something here. When you start contributing in open source projects, sometimes what happens, you will get the exposure of real life projects. This is the plus point. Like, you will get yourself out from the comfort zone.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Nitish. Thank you, Vishal. Anyone else would like to add something or delete something? Okay, okay, fine. So basically, open source is a license agreement that allow users to modify a piece of work and reuse either as independently or as an integration to the existing project. So its importance can be perceived by the way it has revolutionized the modern technology standards. And some of the most popular technologies you hear and you use include Android, Kubernetes, TensorFlow, Swift, Firefox, VLC Media Player, and whatnot. The list goes endless. So you see that the technologies around you that are very dominant are actually the result of open source. And here I would like to point out one more thing, and that is what makes this meet a little more important. It's unconventional. What most of the people have the impression is that the open source programs are mostly focused on software development, and it is only for the computer science undergrads and people, and it's not relevant to the branches like EC and Triple E and all. To eliminate this misconception, we are inviting Vedant from GSOC 2020, who worked at BeagleBoard. His project was to implement REPL interpreted for PRU. It's a dual core microcontroller system present on AM355X system on chip, which powers the BeagleBone. And he would elaborate on how to go about and how to search for opportunities. And it's kind of very rare sometime that you see people from EC. So I'd like to invite Vedant to please take up from here. Looks like Vedant, what happened? Wait, let me see. There's some technical issue on the Vedant side. Just give me a moment. Vedant? Vedant, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You can
Yeah,
please take
yeah.
up now.
Yeah, okay. So let me give a short introduction about myself. I am Vedant Paranspe, and I am currently in third year at Veer Mata Jizabad Technology Institute. In short, VJTI. It's a premier college it's a state government college in Mumbai. Then I am majoring in electronics engineering. So this summer I did GSOC with beagleboard.org. A little background about beagleboard.org. Then it is a kind of open source foundation. So what it does is it creates these boards, like, if I guess everyone knows what Raspberry Pi is. So it creates development boards like Raspberry Pi, but there's a catch, and the catch is that all the hardware design is open source. everything is open source. Like if you want to make your own legal code, you can print a PCB and solder components to make your own at home. So so I would like to present. Uh,
Vedant, you can actually start presenting now.
Vedant is having internet issue. He'll be right back with us. Just give me a moment.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Vedant, you're audible.
Yeah, I'm actually sorry. I am in a village area, so I have a very slow internet connection. Okay, so I would like to tell about my journey in open source. I guess I started programming since I was in 11th. I had C++ in my course in because I was in a CBSE school. So I studied C++ well in those 2 years and did quite a lot of projects involving multi-threading and networking and stuff. So then after I came in first year, I continued doing these things. And again, I was a part of a robotics club of my college. So I got to learn a lot about electronics and microcontrollers in my, in my time I was in that robotics club. So the first microcontroller that I learned to use was Arduino. It Atmega 328. So I'm tinkering with Arduino for like 2 to 3 years. For many years I like couldn't write code myself on Arduino. But after I learned how C++ works or after how C works, I was able to write code in Arduino, and I did quite a lot of projects with using Arduino. Then after that, in first year, in first year, robotics club has their own, has their own development board, which is based upon ESP32, Espressif ESP32. So because of that, I was able to learn how to use ESP32. So then since like ESP32 is a hardcore embedded device, many devices use it, many industries use it. So as a result, I got quite a lot of exposure to the end, what kind of tools are actually used in industry, in embedded industry. So I did several projects in ESP32. And after that, then in March, lockdown was imposed, and then again, in April, the application period for GSOC starts. So yeah, so after I got selected in GSOC, then I spent 3 to 4 months in my GSOC stuff itself.
Vedan, hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. So during the application phase, what were the challenges that you faced? More of like, how did you choose the project and the organization? How did you do that?
Yeah. So what I did, I just first of all I went to the GSOC site. Then you can search projects according to the language. So I was well versed in C++, C, and Python. So I searched projects according to these three languages. Then I had created an Excel sheet. So first iteration had about some 30 to 40 different organizations because I liked their project ideas. Then after that, I just kept on visiting their sites, looking at their projects, and hereby, like in about a time span of 3 to 4 days, I eliminated majority of those, and I was left with about 5 organizations. So after that, I started. I mean, most organizations have some kind of public channels or IRC or Discord groups in which like we can join the community, discuss with their community members. So just a minute. Yeah. So community members. So I joined their communities. Then I discussed with the mentors like how can I progress in this community. Then I looked up their issues on GitHub. I tried to solve quite a few. Then after that, I had kind of shortlisted 2 organizations. First was aerospaceresearch.org, and the second one was beagleboard.org. So I applied for both of these problem statements because I had experience in. I mean, I had experience in using software-defined radios and stuff, and it was something that I mean in aerospace research. Project ideas were quite similar to using a software-defined radio and signal processing. So I applied there, and as well since I had experience in embedded, I applied in beagleboard.org too. So I guess that's how I selected problem statements. It's just like you should first of all search for the problem statements in the language that you are experienced with. If you don't know JavaScript, don't look for projects of JavaScript. It will be very tough to learn a new language as well as do a project, as the projects are itself very hard to do. Does this answer your question, Fahad?
Yes. It very well answers my question, and I had to ask like, the I just went to the write-up of your project on the GSOC page, but it was difficult for me to understand. I'm in EC undergrad itself, but I wasn't able to understand what exactly is that. So I just wanted to elaborate in layman terms so that everyone can understand what you actually did and what that project was all about.
Yeah. So there's a concept like you have a Arduino and you have a PC. I mean, you have your laptop. So do you think you can use your laptop to control motors and read sensors?
See, yes, of course, I think we can do that, right? Because we can communicate to devices via USB. Am I right?
Yeah, but I mean no. I mean sensors like in which there are pins, header pins. You plug in jumper wires, that kind of stuff.
Okay. No, never tried. I don't know. Or
Yes.
like
So
somebody
I
else
guess
wants
you
to, yeah.
cannot do that.
Okay.
Yeah. So the thing is why I can't do it. I mean the Core i7 and Atmega 328P, or both of these are microprocessors itself. I mean they are CPUs of some kind. Okay, but the difference is that I mean in a PC there is a thing called kernel. So what it does is it manages all the it. I mean not kernel. There is a thing called operating system. So operating system, I mean it manages what process should run at this time. So operating system does that task. Like if you are running Zoom as well as Firefox browser. So since there is a single CPU, CPU, the CPU can only process one thing at a time. But since you are using 2 to 3 different programs, and how is it possible? So OS manages that. How does it do it? That, like, if I'm using Firefox, I don't need to process anything. I don't need to process 24/7. There are certain gaps in between. There are certain gaps of time in which my CPU is sitting idle. So my OS will in that idle time, OS will tell CPU that process all the things that Zoom app needs to do. So this thing is called scheduling. So this is how actually a OS works. So let's say you want to generate a signal of say 1 megahertz or 100 kilohertz, PWM signal of 100 kilohertz. So what you need to do is, like, a simple code will be inside a while one, then digital write pin, and then delay some time. Delay, I guess, 1 kilohertz. So 10 to the power 3, I guess 1 microsecond. No, 10 microseconds of delay. I should send one every 10 microseconds. So actually the thing is, since CPU is scheduling, I mean, since there is scheduler involved, the CPU cannot do some task at every 10 microseconds. It is not possible for the CPU to do that. So in this case, that's where we need microcontrollers like Arduino. So why do we need microcontrollers like Arduino? Because they don't run an operating system. Okay. So since they don't run an operating system, I can actually make them do some task repeatedly at a delay of 10 microseconds. So for low level control, we need microcontrollers which aren't running a operating system. Okay. So about BeagleBoard, what BeagleBoard is? So BeagleBoard is something like, you can think like it is a Raspberry Pi and a Arduino, and they both are combined into one single package. So BeagleBoard has a main processor which runs Linux, and there is a secondary processor which you can consider something like Arduino. So what it does is, the main processor runs Linux, and the secondary processor does not run Linux. It is a very basic processor. It only has 8 KB of RAM, and I need to program it using assembly. Okay. So basically my project was, since I need to program it using assembly, it is very tough to program it. So I mean, many beginners don't want to use it, but actually it is something that should be used. So my project involved around creating a language which had a syntax very similar to Python, to use the secondary processor called PRU, Programmable Real-Time Unit. Does this make it clear? If anyone has a doubt, they can ask me.
Yeah, people out here, please ask if you have any doubt, like what he does, what he did, and anything related to that. Please ask. Please feel free. Okay, so I just wanted to ask, like, many people haven't started much, like they don't know much in embedded, they don't know much in Arduino, but they keep trying on technologies that are trending, and they look up, okay, this is what we can do in ECE and all. So what would you suggest, that how should they start? Suppose I'm in first year, I'm in second year, and like I'm hoping that, okay, I could get into some good open source program, or like GSOC is one of them. And from an EC undergrad perspective, what would you suggest, and what would be a good start for me?
See, GSOC is a program which does not discriminate according to your college or your branch. So even if you're from EC and you're good in web development, you can still apply for organizations which have projects in web development. And even if you're from chemical engineering and are interested in embedded systems, you can apply for embedded system projects, and you will get selected if you're proficient enough. So don't say that I'm in EC, so I should only do embedded, and I'm in CSE, and so I should only do web dev. Explore different fields, and according to whatever you felt like, yeah, I'm enjoying this, so continue forward in that. And as far as how do I start with embedded? So for embedded, I would say C, C++ is a must. You should be very good at that language. You should have a good control over it. If after that, if after you have a good control over that language, I guess for beginners, Arduino is the best place to get started. And how to get proficient in it is, the answer is very simple. You have to do as many projects as you can, because projects are the best way to learn any tool or any software.
So, Vedant, like you were telling about your project about the Beagle board, and there were kind of some hi-fi terms. So, starting from scratch, like people are going to start with Arduino and they're going to make project. What would be a better thing to do so that they reach their heights? Because it often happens that we make project. For example, some things are there, some courses are there on Udemy, and they figure out those and start doing and making things. But to get to a better height, to get thing to that level, what is thing that makes a difference actually here?
Yeah, so the thing that makes a difference is, I guess, your attitude. Uh, See, the thing is, embedded is very tough. You will get demotivated often, like things don't work easily. So just keep trying. As in, I can share resources after this meeting, specific resources to get into embedded. And the thing is, you need to have a very good hands-on experience. Like majority of time, problem with hardware-based projects is that you spend a lot of time in solving hardware issues and very less time in writing the code for it. So that is a very big issue if you are starting now. So if you do start, make sure you don't ignore the hardware side. It is very important. Like for example, there's a protocol called I2C. So mostly sensors use I2C for communication. So some time back I was doing a project. It had a Raspberry Pi and a I2C sensor. So I tried all day, but I couldn't get it to work. But then after a day or so of trying, I came to know that I need to add pull down resistors on the sensor lines. And as soon as I added the sensors, it started working immediately. So the thing is, however good your code is, after all, hardware is hardware. You need to be like very good at. I won't say very good at it, but you need to put extra effort to make some hardware project work.
Okay, okay. So yeah, of course, we often face that problem even during lab. We have made the circuit correct, but we don't get the output. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, so there were different phases, right, in GSOC. First was this one, like the ideation and application. And after that, there was community bonding, and then there was the coding phase 1, 2, 3 with evaluation. Could you tell us what you did in all these phases, and what were the challenges and what you learned in these phases?
Okay, so in the first phase, application period, since I mean, fortunately, I guess it was from March 15 to March 31st was the application period, and fortunately, I mean, lockdown was imposed at that time. So I got a lot of time to read about the problem statements and then write a proposal. So in that time, I didn't face any problem as such. But if college was there, I am sure I wouldn't have got into GSOC, because it was very tough to write a proposal with college work. So I guess I have a suggestion in here is, if you want to apply, make sure that you start quite early. Like start from February. Problem statements are announced from something February 27th or 25th February. So start as soon as the problem statements are announced. Since it is very tough to write a statement with your college work, labs, and assignments. Then in after selection in the bonding period, I had to learn quite a lot of new things. I mean, I made a language, so it is something that I didn't knew. It was very core CS concepts. So in that period, I spent a lot of time on YouTube watching lectures. Something that helped me was GATE lectures of computer science compiler design. So it helped me clear my concepts. And after that, I did a lot of practical stuff with the tools that I needed to make a language. Then after that, in the coding period, I won't say there were many problems, but yeah, there were day-to-day problems. Like I was stuck in this something. There was some bug which wasn't getting solved, but I won't call it a issue. Like it happens in software development after all. So yeah, that's it, I guess.
Okay, so getting into something like this because you had to do it something yourself, because there wasn't any curriculum, college curriculum. Of course, we know that the college curriculum and what we do at GSOC or any other open source program is entirely different. So how do you manage both of them hand in hand? Like most of the people are here with college going on. So how do you manage, like throughout the year you have been learning? So how do you do that?
Like honestly speaking, hardly there are. I mean, I don't study as much in college stuff. I don't pay much attention to college stuff. I won't say that you should do that. I mean, I don't have a very good pointer, so I guess I regret that thing. But yeah, I do have knowledge that others in my class don't have. So as far as managing, I try to pay attention in the lectures, but after lecture I don't open my college books. So I guess I try to learn maximum in the lecture itself, ask a lot of doubts, take notes. So it helps me like before 10 days before exam, I can revise from my notes and I can easily get about 8 pointer. So that's it. Like pay attention in the lecture. Don't ignore the lectures. It is very important. After that you can spend your time to learn some new things.
So GSOC is about all the top organizations from the world. Like you are from BeagleBoard, I'm from Red Hat, and there's another guy who's from Julia. And these organizations are the one who bring up projects and give you opportunities. So what would like to you tell us about your community, like the BeagleBoard? How was your experience with the community? How has it helped you grow?
uh, Yeah, so as for the community, I guess I learned a lot about how I should communicate with my I won't say superiors, but with my co-workers. Since I mean, three of them were from India, but one was in Germany, other was in Delhi, and the third one was a German citizen. So I guess I still made friends with all of them. So the I mean, the thing that I learned was communication, how important communication is. So that was something that I learned a lot from my organization. Other than that, I won't say my mentors were very cool. Like they were very, I mean, they were very aged people. So like they weren't very friendly with me. But okay, they did help me out whenever I had some problems. So that's how my community was. But they do I mean, they were not friendly, but they did help me, and I even got about $100 of coupon from my mentor for printing PCBs and stuff. So yeah, they did help me a lot. And again, other than that, I was sent a lot of hardware to test my project on. So hardware was around $300 to $400 worth of hardware was sent to me. So yeah, I guess that's how my organization was.
Okay. So how are you planning to give back to the community? Now you're a part of open source world. So you'll be making the world better. How are you going to do that?
As far as community, I made a project, I guess that is what I gave back to beagleboard.org. Other than that, I contributed to several projects that I use. So first was PRU GCC. So it is a compiler for that microprocessor. I contributed to it, and then I also used a GUI tool called FTX UI. So I even contributed bug fixes and new features to that repository as well. Other than that, I do keep on contributing here and there if I find issues in repositories I use. If you want to see more, you can check out my GitHub, like where I contribute and stuff.
Okay, okay. That would be very helpful for people. And we would like to definitely explore more. I'm waiting like any people out here would like to ask questions to Vedant.
Yeah, I have posted chat section.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, put us the link in the chat section.
I would like to ask a question. Hello.
Yeah, Nitish, you're audible.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Please.
Actually,
yeah, please.
I want to ask, how did you approach the ideation phase?
Yeah. So, as in, I had, do you have a doubt like how I shortlisted my organizations?
No, like if after selecting a particular idea, a particular project, how did you approach that?
Uh,
This things I have to make. This is like a, like you are getting something new, and then you have to approach it.
Yeah, so I when I first read my problem statement, as such, I didn't have much idea about the specifics of the project, but it seemed very interesting. Like I had to make a language and stuff, so it seemed very interesting. So what I did, I mean, I did what I did. I first of all communicated with my mentors. They explained me. They gave me basic understanding in a layman's terms that what I have to do, what they expect from me. After that, thanks to Google, like everything I found on Google about all stuff. Like you just have to search properly. Like my project was PRU, so I read a lot of documents about that project, and I read its data sheets and whatnot. I watched a lot of videos. Like it took me about 5 to 6 days to actually understand what I have to do in the project. So you just have to read stuff because in open source generally documentation is very good, so you will get documentation. You need to thoroughly go through documentation to like actually understand what you have to do, or even sometimes go to the repositories, look up their code and understand how it is working.
Okay, okay. How did you make the proposal, and when did you submit? Like the 50 in the 15 days of period, like in in the first 7 days, did you submitted the proposal, or 14th day or 13th day, like that?
So I since I submitted to two different organizations, uh, since I submitted to two different organizations, I put in a lot of effort for the first one, that is aerospaceresearch.net. But unfortunately, the mentors there were very ignorant and stuff. So they hadn't even updated the problem statement. And the time I spent about 10 days for that problem statement. And I came to know that it was completed last year and the mentors had forgot to remove it from the web page. So I felt kind of demotivated. But okay, like, but after that, I went to beagleboard.org, and then I submitted the proposal for there about 2 days before the before the deadline. And for the aerospaceresearch.net, I had submitted about 5 days earlier. But it doesn't matter like how late you submit, it should just be before the deadline. And make sure to like verify it once with your mentors before you submit, because many a times they do give inputs like where you should improve or what you should add.
Okay, okay, thank you. One more question I have to ask. Sometimes
Yeah.
what happened after looking the projects and reading the summary idea. Yesterday, I was reading a summary idea of a particular project, and then after reading that, I found that this project is a bit interesting, but the skills which was required in that particular project was Kubernetes, Quarkus. It is like a very tough. I'm a Python guy, so like uh, if I'll be interested in that particular project, do I need to start everything from scratch? Like I have to learn Java, then Kubernetes.
Yeah. Like if
So
some projects has some, I mean, it is based upon Kubernetes, so you must know how to use Kubernetes, and you must be at least proficient in using Kubernetes. Like
so
it
so
is related. Yeah.
better I should choose a project where I have some 50% of the skill that is matching to the skill which is required in the
Uh,
particular project. Is
as
will
of
it be?
now, if you are starting now, I won't say do that. But if you are going to select in say March 2021, then in that time, yeah, do that. Like select projects in which you do have experience. But
Okay.
if you are preparing from right now, then you have a lot of time to learn new things. So don't reduce your chances with problem statements that you only know. You can venture into, I mean, you can also try to learn about problem statements which you don't even know anything about. You don't know anything about that problem statement. Like there's a lot of time, 6 months, I guess.
Okay. Uh, how did you make a proposal? Like, what is the correct way?
Uh, I guess there isn't a correct way, but every organization has some kind of. I mean, for aerospace, they needed a PDF, and then Beagleboard needed a wiki page. So it depends on on each organization. But I can tell you this: like each organization has some kind of ideal proposals, like very good proposals from previous years. So you can ask your mentors to share those with you, and you can like refer to those how to write a proposal. I mean, this is a very generic question because each organization has some different kind of, some different kind of works, like how I should write a proposal. Best answer is that only the mentor can tell you how you need to write a proposal.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question that I can ask.
Sure,
First of
sure.
all, congratulations for the completion. And
Yeah, thank you.
so my question is like, when you apply for a project, do the mentors expect proficiency in that in the particular domains, or do they expect? Do they expect you to show interest to learn those?
There must be both those things are necessary. Like if you don't know about that project, but I mean through your previous projects you have shown proficiency, you have shown skill that you can learn something within 1 month, or so I guess then they will prefer you. Like for my in my case, I hadn't used a Beagle board earlier before. Never. Like it is very costly. Like to import in India, even the basic version costs 4,000 rupees. So I hadn't used it ever. But since I had a lot of projects in ESP32 and in embedded domain, I guess my mentor saw that he has projects in embedded. So I guess he can easily learn this thing. So you should have good experience in the domain you are applying, but mentors don't expect that you are very good at the specific project or at specific tool in which you are going to contribute. This
Okay,
is true
thank
for embedded thing. For
okay,
software development, I don't think my answer is correct.
okay. Thank you for that. And like, there's another question that I would like to ask.
Yeah.
So if you're taking look at open source code, is there some strategy that you follow? Because like a couple of times I've tried to contribute to open source code and I'm not able to make myself understand the stack completely. So
Uh-huh.
pertaining to GTalk, do you seek help from mentors to understand how the whole project works? If at all you're adding
Yeah,
some
yeah.
feature onto existing code base.
Yeah, you can do that. Just, I mean, there is an unwritten rule. Never ask your mentor like, please tell me how X works. Sorry, don't ask something very basic like something which you can look up. If you have like tailored doubts like why is this variable named like this, or why does this variable have this value, or why is this function placed here, if you have some kind of doubt which is similar to this, then you can ask your mentor. I'm sure they will help you out. But other than that, never ask basic doubts. They will just ignore you or judge you that he doesn't know much stuff. And as far as if you have any issue with, if you're not understanding, you can simply create a issue on GitHub. Someone will surely answer your doubts. And again, still it doesn't solve the issue, then you can send a mail to them, personal mail to the maintainers of that project. And as far as how do you contribute to a new project, you should first of all go to their issues tab, then look for good first issues tag. There is a tag called good first issues. So you should first of all try to solve those very basic issues and progress your way above as you learn how the code works in the project.
Thank you.
I'd like to second what Vedant said here. Vedant, what you said, like it's not may not be true for software development, but actually what you said is exactly true. It happens same here too. So I'd like to tell about my stack. I was proficient in Java here, but I didn't work on Quarkus. It's a cloud native platform of Red Hat, and we were supposed to use the uh, command mode of that and do something. I didn't know anything about that, and what I did was I started exploring, and I did not ask the mentor because I also kept thinking that if I ask the guy, he would say that he does not know. So instead, he gave hints. Like I used to ask it, okay, what should we go about with electron or something, something. So he said, no, we want to develop a native binary. Go with this, go with that. So I could ask the questions that are not available on internet, but the things that are available, like how does this work or how does that work, that shouldn't be actually a part of that. Second thing was about, like Dinesh asked, was about interest or something. It's actually, as Vedant said, exactly, it's about both. You should be inclined to that you should tell that, okay, I'll be able to do this project, that is your capability. So he should trust you because you are going to be selected as his students. No mentor wants to spoil his reputation, because the mentor will fail you if you do not do work properly. So you should definitely demonstrate your capability. And of course, interest is one thing. So you have to talk to the mentor and tell things that, okay, this and this and this. And I had an exceptional PR. I opened a PR before project, and it has 101 conversation and 68 commits. It was a proof of concept. So I was using that as a way of communication. There's a IRC channel. We were using actually this one, Zeolip, for communication. So you could go there, and there's a community. If you want to ask about some, I'm talking about Red Hat products specifically. They have Zeolip, and every other community have their own chat channel. As Vedant said, IRC and all. You could go there and ask that I'm not able to understand this or that, and they will definitely be happy to help you. But of course, just make sure that it's not available on Google. Okay. Okay. So yeah, Vedant, there's a question on the chat. Can you please see that?
Yeah, I will answer that. Okay. uh, Open source coding as such, there isn't something called open source coding. Like if you want to, like say you use Matplotlib and you are quite proficient in Matplotlib, then you can go to their GitHub repository and try to solve issues. As such, don't approach like I want to do open source coding. That isn't the right way. You should do projects in various. I mean, if you know something, then you should do projects in that thing and learn that tool or framework or language, whatever. If you are proficient in it, then just go and try to solve issues on the repository. But don't do it like I want to contribute somewhere. It doesn't, like मन से नहीं होता हो. Like it doesn't make sense to do that. You shouldn't go after the goal like I want to do open source coding. Just contribute to the projects that you like. Does that answer your question?
Shubham, can you come up to the mic if you want to, or you can
Yes.
write on chat?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So Vedant, there was another question a guy pinged me, like, what is the role of communication with the mentor before the project? That is in the after the projects are announced. So the role of communication with mentor, yeah, and selection.
Yeah, so communication is the most important part of getting selected in GSOC. Even if you have a very badass proposal, very good proposal, but you don't communicate well with your mentor, you won't be selected. It's as simple as that. So there are, at least I know about my organization that there were 2 weekly meetings during GSOC. So I made sure that I attended all those meetings and communicated well with my mentors. So I guess even Red Hat must have something like that. Did it, Fahad?
Yeah, I was like, I used to communicate regularly with my mentor, and as I told you, there was PR of 101 conversation, and it is
Yeah.
68 commit. So yeah, that's the
So
way.
communication is very important. Like you can trouble your mentors. Like just ask them if this proposal is okay. If I need to implement this, don't be shy. Just communicate. Be an extrovert in terms of communication. It's very important.
Yeah. So Vedant, there was one thing I felt like the way I write code generally for my
Huh.
normal project, right? They are like, suppose I'm writing code, but here the things were very different. I had to write everything. I had to write test. I had to set up C, I had to set up CI, I don't know, gesture. There were a number of things that had to be taken care of to a product. So in case of your site, like your PC, right? What are the things that actually make it different? Because the thing going is going to be a real world thing.
Sorry, can you repeat the last part? I couldn't hear you.
I mean, the way you make personal project and the way you do it in GSOC or the way you work on any real world project, are they
Yes,
different?
yes, they are
And how
very
are they?
different. If you want to make a open source commercial or some kind of project that a lot of people use, first of all, your code should be very much readable. It should have comments. The second thing, it should be maintainable. Maintainable as in, if you write some trash code and then you have to add some feature or delete something after say 1 month, you yourself won't be able to do that because the structuring is so awful that you don't know what should I do to make it right. So just make sure that your code is clean, it has comments. Then try to follow same coding style. Like there is camel case. So if you are using camel case, make sure you use camel case only throughout the project. Don't change to some other case. Then after that, third part, I guess fourth part is you need to write so what are tests? So say if you have a feature X, and so how will you test that if a feature X works? Like you will compile the program and click here and there, then type something. Like you will manually test if it works. Okay. So in a big project, there are thousands of features. So you cannot spend time testing each feature after making a minor change in the code. So for that, you write tests. So there's a thing called unit tests. So what it does is it will in an automated way, it will test each and every feature that you want to test. So it will run these tests at every compile at, like if I make some change to the code, so it will run a test again if I compile it. So I mean, if I write test, I save my time. Like I don't need to test each and every feature, and I can easily find if there are any bugs in my code. Then after tests, something very important is documentation. Uh, like however good your project is, documentation nahi hai, so if there isn't a documentation, then how will people know that like what this project does? How should I use this project? So it is very important to write good documentation. Generally, documentation is written in README itself. If you want to make extra efforts, you can use Sphinx or Oxygen, or even make YouTube videos or whatever. So these 5 to 6 things differ when we make a commercial project versus when we make a personal project.
Vedant, there's another question from a guy. Please, can you answer that? It's on
Yeah.
the chat.
Yeah, it is very necessary to be proficient in C or C++ because Java isn't used anywhere in embedded world. I mean, even C++ hasn't been adopted in embedded world. It is still in phase of adoption. Like almost all, I would say almost everything in embedded is done using C, and some newcomers in embedded world is C++ and Rust. There is no place for Java in embedded world. Does this answer your question, Siddharth?
Yes, Priya, thank you.
Guys, if any.
I had a question. Like after selecting like a project, like suppose there is an X project, I found it very interesting, but it has like more than 70% of the technologies are like that. I don't know. So taking a bottom up or top down. Like first I should get a basic knowledge of those technologies, and then I should go to GitHub and try to contribute, or I should directly start contributing on the way I should learn those things. Which way
I
will be
would
better?
say you should at least know what the project is. So you should have the basics about the project clear. After that, you can start contributing and learn on the way. Like as far as basics, I would say you should know how to use the very simple features. So that is how can you do that? You can make a project, a very short project, a 1 day project using the tool. Then after that you can continue to go above, like you can contribute. First of all, look the good first issues. Then as you try to solve some tougher issues, you will learn on the way. But make sure you know the basics of the project. Just don't go and try to contribute.
Okay, like we can, like I can just go for a crash course kind of thing, or like understand what the basic concepts are, and then I can
Yeah.
start contributing on those things.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, Vishal, there would be technologies, our crash course, then flow documentation. So, anybody else
You are not
is
audible.
open. Vedant is ready to answer any of you. Guys, I'm saying if you want to ask questions, please ask. So Vedant, so I think this is going to be kind of final
Yeah.
question from my side. What after GSOC? In the open source world, you have been introduced, you have done work, and you have been paid a handsome stipend. पैसे मिल गया भाई. So what from here now?
So with the money, I guess I bought a phone, and then I'm also buying a lot of electronics equipment. And yeah, so I can do a lot of projects with with whatever I'm going to buy. So other than that, I guess I'm preparing right now. I was preparing for internships, TPO internships that come in my college. So the thing is, however good I am at coding or however great my projects are, in the end, companies take tests based on data structures. So it doesn't matter if I have done GSOC. I need to be good at DSA too. So I am preparing for DSAs right now. I mean solving questions of DSA and all. And then I have applied and applied in various companies for internships and all. So that's it for now, because I missed exams and all stuff are there. So I will start with projects sometime later, say in November, December, sometime.
Okay, okay. So I guess we are done with the questions, and it was really nice talking to you, Vedant. Thanks a lot for being here at Triple IT
Yeah,
Trichy. We wish you a pleasant year ahead.
welcome. Yeah, it
Thank you.
was great interacting with you guys. Okay.
Thank you, Vedant.
Yeah. I guess I should leave, right?
Yeah, yeah. Sure, sure, sure. You can leave.
Yeah.
You can leave.
Okay. Bye.